The world of horror film has spent and made millions and millions of dollars constructing the most disturbing and macabre stories, scenes, and actions the human mind can conjure up. Despite their concerted efforts to dream up the disgusting and vile, they don't hold a candle to what incredibly evil human beings can do in real life. And when one of these stomach-turning scenarios plays out, it is often the brave men and women of the police force who arrive on the scene to observe the grisly aftermath. Here are 7 police discoveries that will give you nightmares. Number 7. Tasha Hatcher. There's nothing exceptionally evil about someone who would hurt a helpless child. And when a woman in Texas was acting in a bizarre fashion, gesturing wildly in her yard while blasting loud music, neighbors became concerned and called the police, who found that a 2-year-old child had been put in the oven. The kid received serious burns on 60% of her body and spent much time in the intensive care unit from the mother's supposedly drug-induced diabolical actions. Number 6. Foss Lake. In 2013, Oklahoma police officers conducting training in a nearby reservoir made a shocking discovery. What they stumbled upon were the remains linked to 2 long-open cold cases. A 1952 Chevrolet and a 1969 Camaro each contained 3 bodies. 3 teenagers who had disappeared in the Camaro and 3 adults in the 52 Chevy. Both cases were ruled accidental, but suspicion of foul play still circulates, as both of these disappearances occurred only 1 year apart in the exact same location. Number 5. Halloween decorations. When repairmen showed up to fix a fence one October morning, they were a little creeped out by a very lifelike Halloween decoration hanging from the fence. Turns out this was no decoration at all, but rather a 31-year-old Ohio woman who'd been running from her attacker and become tangled up in the fence. She died there from her wounds, which police found were inflicted to her face and head by the attacker whom she so desperately trying to escape. Number 4. Fetal Remains. Ulrich Klopfer was one of the most prolific abortion doctors to ever live. After his death, it was discovered by police that during his daily commute, Klopfer had been hauling home fetal remains to his house and storing them in his garage. 2,246 preserved remains of aborted fetuses were discovered in his home, and another 165 in his car. What possessed him to do something like this is unclear, but the whole thing is chilling to the core. Number 3. Essex Lorry. In October 2019, police found 39 bodies of Vietnamese victims inside a refrigerated truck in Essex, United Kingdom. The victims are thought to have frozen to death inside the refrigerated lorry, and 5 men, including the truck's drivers, were charged with manslaughter and other offenses. It is reported that many others were arrested in what looks to have been a case of human trafficking gone terribly wrong. Number 2. Fritzl. In 2008, a 19-year-old woman lay sick in an Austrian hospital while her doctors made a public plea for her missing mother to step forward to deliver much-needed medical information. When that mother, Elizabeth Fritzl, arrived at the hospital, nobody could have fathomed the story she had to tell. It starts in 1977 when she was 11 years old and her father, Joseph Fritzl, began sexually abusing her. In the ensuing years, Joseph turned their basement into an underground prison, complete with living areas and an eerily placed soundproof room. When Elizabeth is 18 years old, her father lures her into this hellish dungeon where she will remain for the next 24 years. During this time, he fathers 7 children with her. 3 of them live with Joseph and his wife, who has no idea that this is going on, but rather is fooled into believing their daughter had run off and joined a cult. 3 more live in the basement with Elizabeth, and 1 additional child had passed away shortly after birth and was incinerated by Joseph. Her only escape came when Joseph finally agreed to let her out of her prison to see her ailing daughter in the hospital. Authorities poked many holes in the stories Joseph had been feeding them during this time, and an anonymous tip led police to take both Joseph and Elizabeth into custody. Once promised that she would never have to see her evil father again, Elizabeth spelled out the gruesome details of her 24-year imprisonment. Soon after this arrest, Fritzl, now in his 70s, spilled the beans and told police how to find his homemade prison and gave them access codes needed to enter. The concealed cellar had 3 cells, a basic kitchen, bathroom facilities, 2 sleeping areas, and the most disturbing of all, a soundproof room where it was thought that Fritzl repeatedly raped his daughter, sometimes in front of her children. The door to this hellhole was located behind a shelf in Fritzl's basement workshop, protected by an electronic code entered using a remote control unit. To get to the area where Elizabeth and her children were held, 8 doors in total needed to be unlocked. 2 of those doors were secured by electronic locking devices. And number 1, the Crippler. On Monday, June 25, 2007, police in Fayetteville, Georgia responded to a request by the media company World Wrestling Entertainment, or WWE, to check out the home of professional wrestler Chris, the Crippler Benoit, who had sent unusual text messages to colleagues and had failed to show up for scheduled appearances. Police notified the WWE that afternoon that they had found 3 bodies and were considering the house a major crime scene. The bodies were those of Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their 7-year-old son Daniel. Autopsies and subsequent investigation showed that Nancy had been bound hand and foot and died of asphyxiation on June 22nd. Their son was killed in his bed on the morning of June 23rd, also by asphyxiation. And Benoit then hung himself in his home gym on the evening of June 24th. Several motives are thought to be at play. Benoit almost certainly was an avid steroid user and was prescribed testosterone at the time of the murders. As a professional wrestler, he was also surely suffering from CTE due to repeated blows to the head, likely untreated concussions. Alcohol and marital conflict are also thought to be mixed into what became a perfect storm, tragic 3 days, and a horrifying discovery by police. Well, I hope that doesn't give you nightmares. But if you'd been the one to make these terrible discoveries, it definitely would. We should be incredibly grateful to the brave men and women who respond to these calls and shield us from the horrifying reality found in these police discoveries. Now hit subscribe and leave us a comment. Sweet dreams.